You're watching Gearz, brought to you by Ram Truck.
You know, every once in a while, the manufacturers will come out with a new vehicle or a product that just hits the market perfectly and blows everybody away. Ram did it with the Express pickup, and Ford has done it with the EcoBoost engine in the F-150. Now, even though the EcoBoost is a 6-cylinder engine, it's got some pretty impressive numbers. Twin turbos, 365 horsepower, and 18 miles per gallon. But as good as those numbers are, they're not good enough. Not with the price of gas going out the roof and the government having no idea what to do about it. Fortunately, we don't need the government to make these numbers better. We have the aftermarket. Now, some of the most common questions that we get from viewers are, what are the best modifications that you can do to a newer vehicle that are affordable and easy to put on, but at the same time give you better fuel economy and more power? Well, there's basically 3 areas that a new vehicle could handle some improvement. One is the air coming in, the other is the air going out, and the third is the computer system. So, the first thing that we're going to deal with on this Ford is the air coming out, the exhaust system. Now, believe it or not, the stock exhaust on these things is pretty restrictive, and that's a bad thing on a twin turbo engine because you're choking down a lot of power that this thing's trying to put out. So, we are going to free the beast, and we're going to do it with a heartthrob exhaust system. Check it out.
Basically, I think what Ford did was just took the system they're already running on their V8s, naturally either fuel-injected systems, and said, well, this will work on our EcoBoost, and put it on there, and they were happy with the sound quality, and they were getting plenty of performance, but they sure left a lot on the table.
Okay, at first glance, the heartthrob exhaust system looks pretty simple. I mean, you have a muffler, and you have some pipes, you have some hardware and some clamps. But what you don't see is what really makes the difference. So let's dig a little deeper. First of all, you have big diameter 4-inch tubing, which is considerably bigger than stock. You have smooth mandrel bends, so you can't help but get great flow out of this. Then the muffler is a chamber design, which uses a series of chambers and baffles to quiet everything down. But there's some tricks going on in here that make it different than any muffler on the market. Take a look. The large 10-inch diameter body gives you increased volume. The 4-inch inlet gives you great flow. This center baffle has these special wings cut into it that provide great flow this direction, but also act as check valves to keep the exhaust from swirling around and trying to come back the direction it came. Everything continues to flow out the way it's supposed to with very little restriction. It's just quieter. So you end up with a muffler that not only sounds good, but it flows like crazy. The best part is, anybody can put this system in. Come on. With the original exhaust system unbolted and out of the way, the flanged front extension pipe bolts to the stock flange. The next pipe is where you need to do some cutting. Now, since this system will fit all long and short wheelbase F-150s, you'll need to trim this pipe to the length that Heartthrob specifies for your wheelbase. I had a feeling that was going to kick kind of nasty.
Now, quick tip. Brought to you by E3 Spark Plugs, born to burn.
When you're working with exhaust tubing, you may notice that you keep getting cuts on your hands. That's because when they make these systems and you cut pipes, there's always going to be a sharp little edge left inside the pipe just dying to cut your hands all to pieces. Now, one way to get rid of that is to take a file and just go around the inside of the hole. Problem is, this takes a long time and it's not very accurate. The best way to do it is to pick up a deburring tool. Now, if you'll notice, this is just a handle with a rotating head on it, and the head has a cutting blade. So you put it in the hole, it's self-centering, and then you just go around the perimeter of the hole. This cuts off all the sharp edges, leaving the pipe nice and smooth, ready for you to grab any way you want. This is one of those tools that you never hear anybody talk about. You can pick it up at most tool supply places, and it will literally save your hands. If you work with metal, you need one of these. If you want to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website. The next piece to go on is the muffler using the supplied clamps and hangers. Then just finish it up with the last 2 pieces of tailpipe. Now, you may be looking at this thinking, well, that's great, but that's just a catback exhaust system. How good can it be? Well, when Heartthrob dynoed this system, they picked up 38 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque. Man, you are gonna feel that. That's not pretend numbers. And they found that when you're not romping on it, you're gonna pick up a little better fuel mileage too. And those are numbers that are going in the right direction. All right, the exhaust system's the first thing. The next thing we're gonna deal with is the computer. Okay, most people realize that using a computer programmer is one of the best ways to get more power and economy out of your engine. Problem is, programmers have changed a lot over the years, just like your cell phone has. Fortunately, Superchips has stayed up with those changes. Now you can get a traditional style programmer like this, or they've got this new Vivid Link, which is very similar to a smartphone. So basically all you have to do is choose which style you want to use and install it. To do that, just plug the programmer into the OBD2 port, then walk through the programming options, setting them where you want them. This will only take a few minutes and involves nothing more than pushing a few buttons. And that takes care of our computer upgrades. Now, the last thing we're going to deal with is getting more air into the engine, and that means an air intake system. The new air intake system comes from Air Raid, and as you can see, it is very simple, just like everything else we've put on so far today. It comes with this new metal filter box, an air intake tube, and of course their legendary filter, which is going to flow a whole lot more air than this old square nasty thing that's in here. The best part is you don't ever have to replace this filter. All you got to do is clean it when it gets dirty. This, toss it. Now just pop in the new filter box and connect the inlet tube. Then install the mass airflow sensor. Finally, put on the air filter and tighten the clamps. And that's it. 3 simple upgrades that anybody can do over the course of a weekend that will give you more power, which will make your foot happy, give you better fuel economy, which will make your wallet happy, and if you're careful, you won't even get that dirty doing it, which will make your significant other happy. So I guess the question is, if you've got a late model vehicle, why aren't you doing this? You know, one of the cool things about doing a show like Gearz is that every once in a while, we get to go check out some of the new vehicles coming out and evaluate them, and you get to go along for the ride. Now, for a long time, Ford has been raising the muscle car bar with the Shelby GT500 Mustang. And Dodge has been right there with them with the SRT8 Challenger. Unfortunately, Chevy hasn't done as well, with most of their attention going to the Volt, which nobody wants, instead of the Camaro that people do want. So when we heard that Chevrolet was coming out with a new ZL1 Camaro, we were a little skeptical, thinking it might just be a stock Camaro with badges and stripes on it. Something that was trying to pretend that it had some lineage to the original '69 ZL1 that tore up the streets with its all-aluminum 427 and close to 600 horsepower. Everyone agreed that this was one car that Chevy really didn't need to mess with unless they were going to do it right. Fortunately, General Motors felt exactly the same way, and they pushed the suits and the bean counters out of the way, and they let some real hot rodders design the new ZL1, and the results are impressive. First is the body and the aerodynamics. Everything about the ZL1 is designed for speed, and the body uses tricks like a front splitter and airflow through the hood to actually give the car downforce speed, as opposed to the lift that you get with the normal Camaro.
We wanted to make sure it's a 21st century sports car. We wanted to elevate it, so we wanted to not only give you the best in performance, but we wanted to give you the best in new technologies.
The suspension is also loaded with tricks that were developed on the racetrack to give the ZL1 handling characteristics that are not usually found on a pony car.
The ZL1 intention from day one was to not only be a great driver on the road, but we want to win at the drag strip and we want to win at the track.
The car could handle everything I could throw at it. The grip levels were phenomenal, the aerodynamics were phenomenal. On this type of high-speed track, you know, how hard can I push this thing? The car really never gave me any inkling of like, ooh, you crossed the line.
The engine is a supercharged LSA kicking out 580 horsepower, which makes it second only to the ZR1 Corvette in power. Matter of fact, You're gonna find a lot of Corvette DNA in this new Camaro.
Working on this product, I can't tell you, every day I feel blessed and honored to be able to do that. And the car embodies that passion and expertise in a way I've never seen before.
Now, at this point, we had spent some seat time in the car, and it was great. There was only one problem. It was too controlled, too predictable, too safe. And every gearhead knows that a car is like a guitar. Until you crank that sucker up, you don't really know what you have, because they take on a whole different personality when you push them to the edge. And for some reason, GM wasn't eager to just toss anybody the keys of a ZL1. Can't imagine why. But we knew there had to be some way that we could get a ZL1 away from the watchful eyes of GM. The chance came when everybody was eating lunch. The supercharged V8 has incredible power and drivability. So it'll be right at home if you use it as a daily driver, hit a drag strip with it, or run a road course. The suspension and braking allow you to push the ZL1 as far as you want to, and it'll stay right with you, giving you incredible handling and control as you head for the 185-mile-an-hour top speed. There's no doubt about it. Chevy has come up with a car that is worthy of wearing the ZL1 name. But the big question is, how does it compare with its Mustang and Challenger counterparts? Well, and there's no question that Ford hit a 10 with the Shelby GT500, and Dodge hit a 10 with the SRT8 Challenger. But the Camaro ZL1, it cranks to 11.
And now, Paint Tech, brought to you by PPG Industries, bringing innovation to the surface.
You know, one thing that every gearhead dreams of is finding a cheap project vehicle hidden away in a garage or a barn. The problem is, one thing that is usually shot on a barn find is the paint. That's generally why they're so cheap. But for you to have to strip the vehicle down and completely repaint it, a lot of times that is a budget killer for most people, especially when all you wanted to do was enjoy it and drive it. So, what do you do? Well, the question is, do you have to repaint something that looks this bad? Or is it possible to revive it? Well, a lot of times it is possible to bring paint back to life. Even on a black car that's been sitting forever, covered with dust and cat prints and bird poop and who knows what. But it's going to take more than that special miracle wax that your Uncle Bill told you about. You're going to have to buff something like this. And there are some special tricks and techniques that you need to know to do it. That's what we're going to show you. First, you need to clean off the car and see what you got. Now remember, dust and dirt are like sandpaper on paint. So if you just wipe them off dry, well, you're just scratching the paint and making more work for yourself. You're going to want to use a lot of water to clean the dirt and the grime off. Now we're only going to do half of this hood so you can see the difference when we're done. Okay, once the car is clean, you can inspect the paint, see if you've got something you can work with. Now, as you can see here, we've got a lot of hazing, a lot of scratches in this paint, typical black, but all of that can be fixed. What you're looking for is paint that's chipping off, cracks in the paint, clear coat that's gone, color that's too thin, the primer's starting to show through. Any of these kind of problems cannot be fixed by buffing the paint. Matter of fact, you're just going to make it worse. But if you don't have these problems, you have a prime candidate to buff back to life. All right, the first thing that you want to do is wet sand the paint with a fine grit sandpaper. to get rid of all the imperfections and the old paint and the scratches, but not too much old paint. That means you're going to be using like a 2000 grit, 1500 grit sandpaper. And you want to use a quality sandpaper like this from 3M, because cheap sandpaper is going to tear up your paint quicker than that old dirt or bird poop will. Now also, when you're sanding, you want to use a block like this, because that'll give you a nice flat surface and keep you from accidentally sanding grooves into the paint with your fingers. Also, on areas like this that you have a contour or a curve, Durablock or the Eastwood Company has got a whole bunch of these flexible rubber blocks so you can sand into all kinds of different contours. As you're sanding your paint, make sure you keep plenty of water on it to lubricate the paper, and stay away from the edges and the corners since the paint is naturally thinner there. Those areas will need to be done carefully by hand. Hey, we're back, and in the process of showing you how to bring an old nasty paint job back to life. Now, the subject is a barn-find Mustang, and it's black. Yeah, the worst color to try to bring back to life. Now, as you can see, this is what it looked like in the barn. This is what it looked like once we washed it and cleaned it up. You can see all the scratches and the hazes in the paint. Then this is what it looks like once we wet sanded it. Now, some people may be saying, is it possible to bring this back to a gloss? It is. Here's how to do it. In the buffing stage, it's very important to use the right tool because you don't have a lot of margin for error here. What you're after is a variable speed buffer like this. And when you pull the trigger, thing turns nice and slow. You can dial it in from 1,000 RPM to 2,000, and you can finish that paint exactly how you want it. Now, this tool here might look like a buffer with a buffing head on it, but that is a grinder. You put that on your paint, you're gonna burn right through the paint, right through the metal down to China. Don't ever try to buff your paint with a grinder. Now this looks like a grinder, but this is actually a polisher. This is great for putting on a final coat of wax or doing that final polish. As you can see, it's got a dual action head. It doesn't spin, it just kind of sits there and vibrates. So you're not gonna burn through your paint, but you don't have the power to get rid of those sanding scratches. This is the tool you want to use. Now the next question is, what compounds and what pads do you use? Check it out. Now, the best way to remember this is your wool pads are the most aggressive and they cut the best, but they don't polish out as well as the foam pads. And the foam pads, the softer they get, the better they polish. So your first step is to take a cutting compound, like this Mystic Cut from Wizards, and use it with either the yellow foam pad or the wool pad, depending on how much cutting you need. I think the yellow is going to work for us. With the pad slightly damp, spread some compound on the face of it and start buffing. Work in a small area, use medium pressure at first as the compound cuts, and then lighten up as it polishes. Finish before the compound dries and then wipe it off. If you're still seeing hazing and dullness, do it again. Now, as you can see, we got a pretty good gloss happening here, but it can be better. So we're gonna move up to the polishing stage with this Mystic Polish from Wizards and a softer pad. Now, using the same techniques as before, buff the paint again. Just remember to go slow so you don't burn or cut through the paint. The last step is the final polish and wax to protect and bring out the ultimate gloss of the paint. Now, the moment of truth. And with a little bit of work, you can see what the result is. Man, this paint looks new. Matter of fact, it looks better than new because we got rid of some of the orange peel and imperfections that were in it. And if you can do this with black paint that started out like this, you can do it with any color. All it takes is some tools, the right products, and a little bit of time.
What are you working on? Brought to you by Air Raid, American-made quality and performance since 1992.
Here's a question for you. When you have a father and son project, and the son has a mechanical engineering degree and is a pilot of a major airline, and the father is a retired machinist from the same airline, what kind of project do you think they do? Old Jaguar, kit car, hot rod, muscle car? How about a 1937 Ford 1.5-ton wrecker? Check this thing out. Yeah. Now, not only is this truck cool, but it's got some sentimental value to Dale and Lloyd Daniel, who are the guys that sent this in. Seems like Lloyd's uncle bought this thing brand new in 1937, used it for about 10 years, and then parked it. So this thing's been in a garage forever. These guys decided they were going to get it, they were going to bring it back to life. But instead of doing what most of us would do and stick a big old Hemi in there, they're going to do the restoration thing, which is cool. So the first thing they did is tear it all apart, redid the frame. You can see they've got it all painted here, looking good. They completely redid the suspension, front and rear. The engine, which is the 100 horsepower flathead, that was gone through. The interior was done, and all kinds of work was done on the rest of the mechanical parts of the truck. However, one area that they're not gonna mess with is the paint, because check out this great patina that's on the truck, and that Church Motor Company signage, which of course was the company that Lloyd's uncle owned. They say to take that off, kind of destroy the magic of the truck, and they're right. So guys, great project. And to recognize that, we hooked up with our buddies at Air Raid. We're gonna give you an air intake system. All you gotta do is go to their catalog, pick out what you want, they'll send it to you. Now for the other one of you, we're gonna send you a year's subscription to Hot Rod Magazine. So if you ever wanna reconsider putting a Hemi in that thing, there you go. Now which one of you gets this? That's up to you. We're not getting in the middle of that. But for the rest of you guys, if you wanna get your vehicle featured on the show, you gotta send something into the website and we'll do our best to get it on the air. All right, that takes care of it for today. We will see you next week.